Hello, welcome back to the channel and another video. My name's Jono. You may possibly remember I featured a video some time ago whereby I showed you how to scan your negatives from your film camera onto your computer in a budget fashion using a basic light table made from a ceiling light and a DSLR camera. I'd like to revisit the topic of scanning negatives, but this time perhaps using a more robust professional method, if you like, actually using a flatbed scanner that's designed for the process. So let's waste no more time, let's jump straight in and take a look. Okay, so here we go. So these are the negatives that I'm going to be scanning. I'm going to do a future video on negatives in detail, different types, etc. But suffice to say, these are 35mm colour negatives. They're quite old. I would estimate at least 20 years old. Belong to my late father. I've never seen the photographs that are on here. I've been gradually working my way through some of his old negatives and basically scanning them. So these are just two more examples. Because they're quite old, I don't know what film was used here, which can pose a minor problem when you're actually scanning. However, if I just turn on my light table here and put it up to the brightest setting, let me just flick these around a little bit and I'll zoom in when I edit. But you may be able to see here that it does say on the film ISO 100, which can be a useful bit of information when you're scanning, but I'll cover that more when I actually get to the scanning process. But yeah, a lot of films will actually have the brand and the sort of the model, for want of a better term, at the top here and whatever, or of course there may be your own negatives, in which case you're fully aware which film was being used. You'll notice I am quite careful in the way I handle them. I will be wearing gloves when I come to actually place them onto the scanner, but at the very least I'm just touching them by their sides. We don't want any greasy fingerprints, and we try and avoid dust and the like as well, although there are techniques in the scanning process to actually remove those, but prevention is better than cure. I also have a bit of equipment that I find very useful, magnifying loupe as it's often known as, but basically a little portable magnifying glass so that I can examine the negatives more closely before I start scanning, and basically look at what's on there, so that I can obviously adapt my scanning process accordingly. Now, when you think of a scanner, you may well possibly think of something along these lines. This is a pretty standard printer, come scanner, come fax, etc., etc., built in, and scanning table is on top. But the trouble with this won't work on negatives. It's fine if you're scanning prints, because obviously the light shines up from below, hits the surface of whatever you're scanning and bounces back, and the sensor is in the same position. Obviously anything that's not scanned is just going to hit this white background and actually bounce back anyway. So that's no use. Fine for prints, but no use for negatives. So instead I'm using this. This is the Epson Perfection V600 Photo. And unlike the other scanner, basically it's actually designed, it's quite large as you can see, but it's designed for photographic scanning, and in particular obviously negative scanning. And the reason that it's able to do that is if we open up the top, as you can see, it looks just like a normal scanner, but where this white sheet normally is, we can actually remove it. And what you've got then is the option for the scanning section of the scanner to actually be in the top and the light source in the bottom. So the light is then shined through the negative onto the sensor and is scanned that way. Now, the V600 is not the top of the line by any stretch of the imagination. There are much more professional scanners, but obviously you'll pay accordingly. This is, I think, probably the most minor one they do currently, But it's perfect for my needs, and I think it'll be perfect for most people's needs, unless you're particularly to look and scanning into much higher resolutions, to print on a much higher scale, something along those lines. Your average enthusiast, this is the sort of resolution you're looking for. Now, in addition to the scanner, we then have some devices. So, for instance, this is to hold negatives in place. We've got two slots here. We've got slots for positive slides to put in there, so 4 at a time. We've got the 35mm negatives, so we've got obviously option to put two rows in at once if you like. They come with other ones as well. There's one here for 120 film and so on. But basically what these do, if I open it back up again, the negatives are sort of clamped in place using this device, and then this then sits on the glass and it will lock in position. And so this now, you'll see when I close the lid, the scanning area up here is now lined up automatically with the negatives for allowing the light to come through and to be scanned at the same time. So let's get the negatives into the holder and let's give it a go. Okay, so I've got my negative holder and I've got my negatives. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to open this up. It's just a hinged thing. In fact, it comes right off. So I'll do that for now. Now, in terms of which way up it goes in and which way round, this, let me just spin it round so you can see, this does show you here which way round it wants you to put it. So the negatives, for instance, it wants your negative in sort of reverse, if you like, and it's starting at number 1 and working this way. But it doesn't really matter, because obviously once it's in digital form, that you can flip it and spin it round and all that sorts of stuff. So I'm just going to go ahead and slide this in, basically, and just position it so that it's, well, it doesn't actually matter because it's much shorter. I should say to you that if you're developing your own negatives, you can obviously cut these to whatever length you want. These older ones, I've got 4 frames on a strip. Most modern ones, even if you send away to a lab, will have 5 or sometimes 6. So I've got plenty of space to work with here, but normally we would have this butted up against this end. So I'm just going to place it in the middle for now. And let's do the same with this one here. Just make sure that's lying in. And then to keep them nice and flat, we need to obviously put this back in place. And we're just going to push it down until it clicks. Oops. There we go. So now I've got my negatives clamped in place in the holder, ready to scan. Next thing I'm going to do is just prepare the glass on the scanner. Obviously, just everyday use, it picks up dust and stuff, so I've got a blower here just to blow the worst of the dust away that may have accumulated. And then I've also got a cloth, anti-static cloth, that has some glass cleaner, lens cleaner in fact, rather than glass cleaner, specially designed for photographic lenses, so it works very well on this. So that should give us a nice clean surface. Like I say, dust and scratches can be removed from the scan once it's in digital form, but you may as well save yourself a job. Get it as clean as possible. I've already done the scan, the lid of the scanner as well, so that the lens for the or the glass rather for the actual sensor is nice and clean as well. But that's good to go. What we can now do is place our holder in place. It's got a little lug here to actually locate it. So this A is our A strip. As you can see, it's marked here with an A. Obviously, if I was doing slides, what I'd do is I'd have this the other way around, and the C one would clip in here so that we know it's correct. But obviously this at the moment is the right way around. So put that in place, all nice and steady, and then we can close the lid. Now the software that I'm going to be using in order to actually perform the scans is called Silverfast. Here it is here. There are a number of different options for you. In fact, the scanner will come with some free software, even if you don't choose the Epson. most scanners come with some free software, which is ideal for scanning documents and the like. However, you're probably better off investing in something particularly for scanning negatives. It'll give you a lot of tools and options that you'll find very useful. Silverfast is commercial software. I paid a roughly 40 English pounds for it. However, there are some other ones on the market. So have a look around, obviously decide what you feel is best for you. I just get on with Silverfast really well, and it's my software of choice. So yeah, let's just get that launched. And once it's launched, let me take you through some of the basics of the software itself. So on the left hand side here, we've got our scanning controls, and on the right hand side here, this is the window. This area, if you like, represents what the sensor on the scanner can see. So anything we scan is going to appear in this. But let me take you through it, and we'll do it step by step. So the first thing I need to do is do what we call a pre-scan. Pre-scan basically means it's going to do a very basic scan of everything that will be found in this area, so we know what we're working with. So we just click on this button up here, pre-scan, and scanner, you can probably hear kicking off in the background, is going to just do a quick basic scan first of all, relatively low resolution, and just show us what we're working with here. So there you go, you can see some images appearing. Colors and everything look all wrong. Don't worry about that. That's something we need to sort out in the next steps. But there you go. So it scanned the two negatives, or two rows of negatives if you like, and given us, to say, a low resolution of what we're looking at. So the first thing we need to do is basically tell Silverfast what we're working with here. The scanner's done a scan and brought it in, but the software doesn't know whether we're working with black and white or color. It doesn't know what type of film we're working with. It doesn't know what format of film we're working with, etc., etc. A couple of basics up here. First of all, we have some options. So first of all, we're telling it that we're dealing with a transparency. Obviously, this could be used for scanning documents. It could be used for scanning photographic prints, which are not transparent. So if I click this, we've got sort of reflective options. But because we're dealing with negatives, in other words, the light is shining through these things, it's transparency that we've got. It's in negative, okay, because obviously we could be scanning slides, which tend to be in a positive. We're scanning negative, so it knows automatically to reverse the colors that it receives in. This next one, you needn't worry too much about this. Really, it's all about the sort of color depth that we're dealing with. 48 to 24-bit is basically, you've got a few options here, but this is kind of the standard that most of us will be dealing with. So we'll just select that for now. And then here we have our frame. In other words, this red box here that we're dealing with, that's basically telling the scanner what a single frame looks like. So at the moment I've got the whole thing selected. It thinks this is just one big negative. I've got a few options. If I click on this, I can draw the frames out by hand, but a much quicker way to do it would be this find frames option, and I just need to tell the software what format I'm using, in other words, what it can find on the scanner. So here we have film strip 35mm holder. So that's telling it that basically what to look for will be in that sort of 35mm, the two rows that I showed you earlier. So if you click on that, it should automatically pick out frames, and there you go. It's done it. Pretty good job of finding each of the one of the frames. You can see I can click on these and it'll be highlighted. They're now individual scans as far as the software is concerned. Although the color might not be quite right yet, I've got a few more steps to take. We're more than on our way to telling it what we're dealing with here. This window here then is basically what the scan will turn out like. So in other words, how we're going to actually save this to disk. So scan dimensions, first of all, you can see, first of all, I can give it a name and where to scan it. I can tell it what type of image I want it scanned in, whether it's TIFF, which obviously is nice high resolution, or compressed JPEG, etc., etc. I don't tend to worry about this too much because I don't use this option. This is for scanning individual frames one at a time, which is fine. If you've not got many to work with, that's probably a better way of doing things. You will take some time and you will obviously get the results you're after. I'm going to use an option up here called batch scan. So basically, once I've set up all the frames, how I want them to be scanned and where I want them to be scanned to, whatever, I can just hit this and it will go off and it will just scan them one after the other. A much quicker workflow, obviously. So the first thing I want to do is look at the export settings. I want to say like how the scan's actually going to be. So you can see the standard resolution for 35mm at 300 dpi, which is obviously quite a nice high resolution. Then it's going to be 425 pixels by 289, not very big at all. For my experience, I tend to zoom in by 300%. And you'll see now, for instance, it's automatically gone 1275 to 867. That's about right for me. If I was looking to print these, I would be, I'll be looking to perhaps go a little higher than that to a nice higher resolution. But to be honest with you, for just sort of storing the images on my computer, just for family use, this is about right for me. You'll see the resolution has gone up to 1600 dpi, and that it's PPI rather, and that it's going to expect the file size to be around about 3 meg each, which is about right for me. As I say, obviously feel free to adjust this to whatever suits you. For this basic tutorial, I'm going to skip over things like these options here. We don't really need to worry about those. Obviously, we can investigate that in a future video and go into a bit more detail. Now, down here then is an option called Negafix. Now, what Negafix is, as I said to you at the beginning of the video, the films are obviously different brands, different emulsions, they have a different color cast to them, etc., etc. And they're also all shot at obviously different ISOs. What Negafix does is it attempts to rectify that. The makers of Silverfast, what they've done is they've gone out to the market, they have done some research on what every film, not every film type, but what many film types look like. They have produced then an option for Negafix to actually automatically adjust the settings of Silverfast to compensate for that. So if we click on the vendor, for instance, you'll see we've got all the major film vendors, Agfa, Boots, etc., Fuji, Ilford, Kodak, all these options. If you know what film you're dealing with, what we can do is select these and then a brand. So for instance, if I choose Kodak here, for instance, not black and white obviously, but if I choose, let's say, Kodak Gold at 100 ISO, you may have noticed that the highlighted frame now has been adjusted. I could have gone with, Ektar at 100. I could have gone with, let's say, not T-Max because that's black and white Portrait. You'll see it's adjusting the frame. If I want to look at this a little bit closer, I can click on the option to zoom in and just show, it'll rescan now just to give me a better resolution so I can see it. But it's going to rescan this based on the settings. Oops, I missed that one. Didn't want that. Let's say it, put it at 400. So a quick rescan. We're still not committing to the disk, it's just resampling what was in the image. Yeah, so, if I'm happy with the color of that, that's how it looks or whatever else, because I've got Kodak Portrait 400 in there, then obviously I'm good to go. If I just choose, let's say, gold and, oops, sorry, I missed gold. Here we go. Gold and 100, because this one was actually 100, you'll see it adjusted accordingly. Now, unfortunately, I don't know what film this is. As I showed you at the beginning, I know it's a 100. It's probably a non-branded film that is not covered for by Negafix. So I can, choose something that I like the look of, or alternatively, I could just leave it as other, and yeah, just choose it as a standard option, and then adjust these settings in perhaps Lightroom or Photoshop, whatever your software of choice, afterwards. I quite like the look of the Kodak Gold 100. I think that's pretty close to what would have been intended 20 odd years ago. So let's just go back to that Kodak. Oops, not black and white. Kodak Gold 100. I'm happy with the way that looks. And what I can do is if I pop back to the original frame size, because this is the one that's been highlighted, all the changes that I've made down here are only currently applying to that frame. If I want to now copy those settings and apply them to all the frames, I can just go up to back to frame here, and I can basically say copy settings to all frames. And as you can see, it pops across all of them and applies those settings. So I'm happy with that. Okay, like I said, I'm ignoring most of these, but I've got it set at 300 zoom to give me this resolution, the film type that I'm like. I can say there are many more settings that I could go into, but I'll use that in a future video. This is just to get you going, really. And what I'll do now is I'll hit batch scan, and here I can choose my batch settings. So I'm just going to scan for JPEG now, but obviously I've got a few options in terms of file type. I'm going to do it as sequential in terms of like it'll just add a number to the name, but I could obviously change the name to something else, or I can just use the frame name, etc., etc. But sequential's fine. Excuse me, I've got hiccups. But the frame number is fine as far as I'm concerned. I'll choose where I want to output these to. For now, I'm just going to do a temporary file. So let's just go back to, let's just make a new folder here and just call this temp, and we'll just select that. So yeah, I'm in a temp file, just JPEG, and so basically let's start that at number 1. Okay, so this is our first file name, but it will add a number to it sequentially each time, and then I'll just click on export, and off it'll go and do some scanning. Okay, so here we go. In the folder that I specified, the 8 images from the scans, you'll see the naming convention has worked out as I've requested. And if I just double click on one of these, you can see that it scanned it for me. The color scheme and everything else, it's not 100% as I'd like it. Like I say, had I known exactly the film type or whatever, I could have fixed that. But this is nothing that I can't alter in Photoshop or Lightroom, etc., etc. There's a couple of marks on the slides, sorry, on the negatives rather, that have come out. You can see marks here. Possibly I could have, cleaned the negatives a bit better and avoided that. But again, these are easy to fix, either in Silverfast, and it's a feature I'll show you in a future video, or alternatively in post, if you like, in Lightroom/Photoshop. I can easily remove these with a healing brush, etc., etc. But let's just flick through the others. Whoops, didn't mean to do a compare. Kids playing in the garden. Yeah, I'm more than happy with these. These are nice. They've got the grain that you would expect in film. Obviously, for those of you that are new to film, you will be familiar that it looks very different to digital, and you've got this grain. But for images that are over 20 years old and have just been sat in a drawer, I am more than happy with how these have turned out. So there you go. Like I say, there's some other options that we need to talk about in a future video, but hopefully I've given you enough information to get you started on your scanning journey. So there you go. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that was of use to you. Thank you everyone who has liked videos, subscribed to the channel, shared videos, commented. Really do appreciate it all. As you may know, I'm trying to hit that magic subscriber number of 1,000 before the end of 2022, and with your help I'm well on the way. So thank you very much. All that remains to be said is to stay safe, and I'll see you next time.